question. Do you prefer a slow rise of volume to ease you into a video? Or do you prefer full blast radio announcer voice from the get-go? Just curious. Hi, I'm Irene, and this is Inkworks. Thought I'd try a misdirection technique to distract you from the dirty desk mat. Let me know if it worked in the comments. Because if it did, I'll use it again in future videos. For this session, I pulled out my toned mixed media paper from Strathmore. It's 184-pound weight, so quite sturdy. I mean, my regular watercolor paper is only 140 pounds, so this stuff is like drywall in comparison. Not that I know a whole lot about drywall. My dreams of building my forever home died alongside my dreams of becoming a famous author, the Stephen King of the cozy mystery genre. But you're not watching to hear about dashed hopes and bitter resentments. No, you're watching for fun art stuff. And if it happens to flow on a river of tears, so be it. Apparently, I've got to bring the drama. I've been creating content here on YouTube for nearly 5 years. Where is my silver play button? I've worked hard on... whoops. Getting back on track now. Nothing keeps an audience riveted like digressing hard, then having to play catch-up. The medium for the day is gouache. If you aren't familiar with gouache, I think the simplest way to describe it is opaque watercolor. The box you just saw is the Iridori winter set from HOLBEIN. HOLBEIN's artist gouache is professional grade and my favorite brand of gouache. I was given that set last winter and have used it on a number of pieces since. This design is inspired by Scandinavian folk art. I've previously talked about my Japanese heritage, but I also have Danish ancestry. Yay for multi-ethnicity! The second biggest compliment I've ever received was when a friend called me both a samurai and a Viking. Of course, it went to my head, and to this day, I still pull it out to big myself up. I must admit, though, that I haven't delved very deeply into Danish culture, which explains why my design here is 70% artistic license. Yeah, I don't know much about Scandinavian art or history, but like a lot of people, I think, I can recognize it when I see it. So yes, this is my own interpretation of Scandinavian folk art. For the sketch work, I went with a Derwent drawing pencil in the color ink blue. Man, I love Derwent drawing pencils. It glid. It glid on this paper like nobody's business. Look, it's okay to feel pride in a compliment. The way I see it, if someone bothered to say it, then gosh darn it, I can bother to revel in it. There are so many ways to feel dumped on and unappreciated by others, and even by one's own self, that I don't see anything wrong in holding on to things that make you feel good. Thanks for joining this session of Irene's Pep Chat. Let's all meet here again soon, yeah? So I was a fan of Hans Christian Andersen's work, even before I was really aware of the Danish connection. If you're unfamiliar with Andersen, he was a Danish author from the 1800s who was best known for his fairy tales, The Little Mermaid being one of his most famous stories. I don't know if that had anything to do with my subsequent interest, but I did take one creative writing class in high school. It wasn't particularly useful. too many angsty teens wanting you to read their poems without returning the favor. Sort of like they were using the class as a captive audience for working out their issues. Oh, hold on. That's what I do here. Anyway, decades later, I joined an online creative writing group to see if I could be any good at it. Under the safety of anonymity, of course. It was also a creative outlet, since I hadn't been arting for many years. I'll take this time to tell you the paint colors that were used. There were only 5: permanent white, peony, Rikyuu gray, blue-black, and geisha blue. I knew I wasn't going to do very much blending or layering, so although I'd initially shown 4 brushes, I ended up using only 2, a number 4 filbert and a number 2 round from Princeton's Select series. This is a small scale piece, only 6 inches by 8 inches, so those small brushes worked just fine. Since I wanted to retain as much opacity as possible, I added just enough water to make the paint easily brushable. By the way, that was way more paint than I needed. That seems to happen a lot around here. Oh no, too much gouache on the palette. Oh no, too much gravy on the biscuits. Speaking of gravy, one of Denmark's most popular dishes is frikadeller. Ooh, that sounds like angry swearing, but it's simply pan-fried meatballs, often served with a cream sauce or brown gravy. Some foods that visitors have said aren't to be missed are Danish hot dogs and pastries. Fish, especially herring, is also very popular. But what I find most intriguing are their open-faced sandwiches, called smørrebrød. They seem to come in endless combinations of toppings, from meats and seafoods to fruits and veggies, and they all look amazing. A little explanation regarding the color choices. It's late November now. Almost all of our backyard trees have dropped their leaves, and my mind has been zooming ahead to Christmas time. So I picked colors that feel wintry to me. Blue, gray, muted purple, and at the very end, a smattering of snowy white. If I were better at animals, I'd have added a couple of woodland critters to boot. Karen Blixen was a Danish author who wrote a couple of my favorite books, Out of Africa and Babette's Feast. That last one, Babette's Feast, funnily enough, actually reads like a fairy tale, with its brevity, surface simplicity, and life lessons. Both stories were adapted for the screen and are excellent films. But while I think highly of Out of Africa, Babette's Feast is one of my all-time top 4 food movies. Seriously, it's up there with Big Night, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and God of Cookery. So my experience with the online writing group was a positive one. I think it improved my writing. It helped that the people there were encouraging and supportive. The thing is, that was almost 20 years ago, and I've been a tad hypercritical ever since. Outside, the wind howled in the trees. Dan Brown, you cliched hack. Last Christmas, I gave you my heart. The very next day, you gave it away? Dude, it's not possible to re-gift someone else's heart. Poor wordcraft. By the way, I know you've probably forgotten about the second biggest compliment thing I mentioned 10 minutes ago, but I'm going to pretend you've been eaten up with curiosity over what the number 1 biggest compliment could have been. Well, it was when a fellow writing group member called one of my short stories Dashiell Hammett Meets Scooby-Doo. I happy cried for weeks afterward. Yeah, there are other brands of artist gouache. Some tubes from M. Graham and Da Vinci are also in my collection. I know Daniel Smith recently added gouache to their product line, but I haven't tried theirs yet. This Holbein gouache worked perfectly here. It's delightfully smooth and opaque. No complaints from me. The motifs here are all flowers and foliage, so very nature-oriented. When I think of nature, I think of Mother Earth, and that reminds me of a wonderful song called Never Turn Your Back on Mother Earth. It was originally recorded in the 1970s by the band Sparks, and since then has been covered by a number of musical artists, including Swedish punk rocker Johan Johansson. My favorite version, however, is the one by indie/alt country rocker Nico Case. The tune is gorgeous and the lyrics can be taken in different ways. However, Sparks were quoted saying, "We got so many compliments about the song being pro-environment and pro-ecology, but it was actually never turn your back on Mother Earth or she will whack you." All this talk of nature makes me think of natural disasters, which in turn reminds me of a Scandinavian film called Force Majeure. I think it was a Swedish film. It's about a family vacationing at a ski resort in the Alps, where they have a frightening brush with an avalanche. I like to rewatch it this time of year for all of the snow on display, but the story is also riveting. There are tense conversations, awkward social interactions, stubborn denials, and painful confessions. But snow. So if that's your idea of a good time, check it out. Force Majeure, the original Swedish version, not the American remake. It must have been so bad because I never hear anyone talk about that one. Denmark is on my travel bucket list, and there are several ways to get there. Ship, plane, and train. No train, unless it's training to swim across the Atlantic Ocean. So 2 ways, ship and plane. Depending on the line, you can find transatlantic cruises that either begin or end in Copenhagen. Those itineraries usually include a couple of other ports of call, so expect a transatlantic cruise to take a couple of weeks. Travel via plane is by far the most practical mode of transport, but it's also the least fun. So my grand plan is to order new luggage now, embark on the 2-week ocean cruise, take in the sights of Copenhagen, including the Little Mermaid statue and Tivoli Gardens, eat and drink everything in sight, then return home with a bunch of postcards and memories. Now I just need to successfully pull off a heist to get the ball rolling. Geographically speaking, Denmark is further north than Washington State. I'm not talking Anchorage, Alaska north, but I am talking Ketchikan, Alaska north. Just to be clear, one doesn't call someone from Denmark a Danish, but rather a Dane. For example, the actor Mads Mikkelsen is a Dane, but you would also call him a Danish actor. Simultaneously, a flaky puff pastry filled with delicious fruit or custard is also a Danish. That likely wasn't helpful at all, so let's move along. If I were to redo this piece, I'd scale it down to make space for a decorative border, because without one, it doesn't feel like a completed painting. Just my opinion. Also, some pink elements would make it more interesting, yeah? I'm delighted to share this piece with you. One of these days, perhaps I'll make my way to Denmark, to take in their art firsthand. Then I'll come home, pull this out, and think, oh, you foolish, foolish thing. Until next time, either give a sincere compliment or accept one gracefully. And stay artsy, my friends.